Welcome to the story of Joshua. This is a retelling by AI for Bible Intelligence. Chapter 1. Moses' Successor. The sun painted the horizon with shades of gold and crimson, its first light glinting off the waters of the Jordan River. It was a new dawn, but also an end of an era for the Israelites. Moses, the great leader who had led them out of Egyptian bondage through the Red Sea and survived 40 years in the wilderness, had breathed his last on the peak of Mount Nebo. A vast void threatened to engulf the heart of every man, woman, and child. Who would guide them now? Amidst this sea of uncertainty stood Joshua, son of Nun. Once a young spy who had bravely scouted the Promised Land and brought back reports filled with faith, he was now an aged warrior. His face was lined with the wisdom of years and battles fought, both with external enemies and inner doubts. But today his dark eyes were alight with a fresh fire, for the Lord had spoken to him. As the camp stirred awake, Joshua climbed a small hill, allowing the rising sun to cast his shadow long and commanding across the plains. Gathering his cloak around him, he began to speak, his voice firm yet filled with emotion. Moses, the servant of the Lord, is no more, but the promises of our God are eternal. Just as he was with Moses, so shall he be with me. Murmurs of hope and apprehension rippled through the crowd. Joshua continued, his voice rising. Moses might have laid the foundation, but it is upon us to build our destiny. We stand at the cusp of our promised land, and the same God who parted the Red Sea is with us. He paused, drawing a deep breath, feeling the weight of the mantle that had passed on to him. Be strong and courageous, he proclaimed, echoing the divine words that had been imprinted upon his heart. For we shall cross the Jordan and claim what has been promised to our forefathers. Every place our feet shall tread upon has been given to us. The crowd listened, hope rekindling in their hearts. With Moses gone, it could have been easy for them to succumb to despair, but here was Joshua, radiating the same conviction and faith that had carried them through the hardest of times. The divine appointment was evident, and the people recognized it. Elders approached him, laying their hands upon Joshua, symbolizing the transfer of leadership and the unity of the tribes. The Levites sang songs of transition, their melodies reaching the heavens, seeking blessings for the journey ahead. As the day progressed, strategies were discussed, plans laid out, and the people prepared. For with Joshua at the helm, a new chapter in their epic journey was about to begin. The mantle of leadership had found its rightful successor, and with God on their side, the Israelites knew they were invincible. Chapter 2. Spies in Jericho. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting Jericho in shadows. The city, with its imposing walls and watchtowers, stood silent, an emblem of the challenges that lay ahead for the Israelites. But tonight, the walls held more than just the Canaanites. They concealed 2 Israelite spies, on a mission most covert. Sneaking through the labyrinthine alleys, the spies sought information, mapping escape routes and gauging the city's defences. But as discreet as they tried to be, whispers of their presence began to flutter through the city. The king of Jericho had his ears in every corner, and soon enough, soldiers were dispatched to hunt the intruders down. The spies, sensing the imminent danger, found refuge in a seemingly inconspicuous house built into the city wall. The abode belonged to Rahab, a woman whose reputation was known throughout Jericho. But that night she would be remembered not for her past, but for the pivotal role she would play in the future of an entire nation. Recognizing the spies for who they were, Rahab made a choice. Instead of turning them in, she hid them beneath stacks of flax on her rooftop. When the king's men arrived at her door, her face betrayed no emotion. With conviction, she spun a tale of how the spies had already fled the city, sending the soldiers on a wild goose chase. Once the coast was clear, Rahab approached the spies, her demeanour resolute. "I know that the Lord has given this land to you," she began, her voice low but unwavering. "We have heard of the miracles your God performed in Egypt and how he dried up the Red Sea. The fear of you has fallen upon us, and the hearts of the men melt with dread." Struck by her faith and realization, the spies listened intently as she continued, "Swear to me by the Lord that as I have shown you kindness, you will show kindness to my family." A pact was struck that night on that rooftop, beneath the canopy of stars, binding the Israelites to Rahab and her kin. Using a scarlet cord, Rahab lowered the spies from her window, ensuring their safe escape. The cord would later serve as a symbol, a promise of safety when the walls of Jericho would crumble. The spies returned to Joshua, their hearts buoyed with newfound hope. They recounted their close escape and spoke of Rahab's faith in the God of Israel. The walls of Jericho might have seemed impenetrable, but the spies had discovered something even more formidable, a crack in the city's morale. As Joshua listened, he realized that while the road ahead was fraught with battles, they were not alone in their fight. For in the most unexpected places, they would find allies bound together by faith in a power far greater than any city wall. Chapter 3. Crossing the Jordan. The horizon shimmered as the vast throngs of Israelites camped on the banks of the Jordan, its waters flowing swiftly, a barrier between them and the land God had promised. This river, while not as vast as the Red Sea, represented a boundary, a transition from 40 years of wandering to finally claiming their inheritance. The murmurs of anticipation echoed through the camp, the memory of Egypt and the parted sea still fresh in the minds of the eldest. As dawn broke on a new day, Joshua, standing tall and resolute, addressed the tribes. His voice, strong and clear, cut through the morning mist. "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you." The Ark of the Covenant, the sacred golden chest carrying the tablets of the 10 Commandments, was the symbol of God's presence. As the Levitical priests hoisted it onto their shoulders, Joshua commanded, "When you see the Ark and the Levitical priests carrying it, move out from your positions and follow it, yet keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the Ark. Do not go near it." The procession began, the Ark leading the way, a beacon of hope and power. As the priests approached the river's edge, an extraordinary event unfolded. The waters of the Jordan, defying nature, began to heap up at a city upstream called Adam. The riverbed, usually hidden beneath the powerful current, lay exposed, its wet stones glistening in the sun. With the Ark held aloft in the middle of the riverbed, the entire nation of Israel passed through, each tribe making its way on the dry ground where waters had flowed just moments before. It was a sight to behold, a miracle reminiscent of the parting of the Red Sea, a testament to God's enduring promise and power. Once the last of the Israelites had set foot on the Canaanite side, the priests, still cradling the Ark, made their way onto the banks. No sooner had they stepped onto dry land than the waters of the Jordan rushed back, flowing once more in their usual course. 12 men, one from each tribe, were chosen to take a stone from the riverbed. These stones would be set up at Gilgal, a memorial for generations to come, a tangible reminder of the day the Lord had made a way where there seemed to be none. That evening, as the sun set over the Canaanite hills, casting long shadows on the tents of Israel, there was a palpable sense of destiny in the air. They were no longer wanderers. They were on the cusp of conquest, standing on the soil of promise, with the tales of God's faithfulness etched into the very stones beneath their feet. Chapter 4. Memorial Stones. In the aftermath of the miraculous crossing, the vast camp of Israel hummed with awe and gratitude. The formidable Jordan had posed a threat, but God once again had made a way. As families set up their tents and fires began to crackle, the events of the day settled into their hearts, a profound realization that they were a part of a divine narrative, threads in a tapestry woven by the hand of God. Joshua, ever mindful of the importance of memory and legacy, called forth the 12 men he had chosen, one from each tribe. Their mission had been simple. Each was to retrieve a stone from the very bed of the Jordan during the crossing. Now, as they stood before him, each bearing a stone, Joshua addressed the gathering, his voice imbued with solemnity. "These stones will be a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask, 'What do these stones mean to you?' you will tell them how the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the Lord. These stones are a memorial to the people of Israel forever." With deliberate intent, in full view of the tribes, the men placed their stones in a circle at Gilgal, constructing a simple yet profound altar of remembrance. Each stone, unique in its shape and size, represented not only a tribe, but also the countless stories, struggles, and successes of its people. Together they stood as a testament to God's enduring faithfulness and power. The memorial was not just for those who had witnessed the parting of the Jordan. It was a beacon for future generations. The elders knew the importance of stories, of passing down tales of God's wondrous deeds. For when times would get tough, when faith would waver, these stones would be a tangible reminder of God's promises. That night, as families huddled around their campfires, tales of old mixed with the fresh stories of today. Parents recounted not only the parting of the Jordan, but also the tales of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The children listened wide-eyed as the narrative of their people came alive, the flames casting dancing shadows that seemed to bring the past to life. In the heart of the camp, the 12 stones stood sentinel, bathed in the soft moonlight, an enduring emblem of a journey marked by God's unwavering presence. The message was clear: remember, and let the future generations know, for in memory lies hope, and in hope lies the strength to journey on. Chapter 5. Circumcision at Gilgal. The Promised Land lay sprawled before the Israelites, a vast expanse of promise and potential. But before they could fully claim this inheritance, there were matters of the heart and soul to be addressed. The weight of their recent victories and the rapidity of their advance had not allowed them a moment of reflection, of turning inwards, of realigning with God. Gilgal became that sacred space. Nestled near the eastern border of Jericho, this encampment was more than just a resting place, it was a site of renewal. Joshua, with wisdom emanating from years of servitude under Moses and guided by God's voice, recognized the significance of this moment. The generation born in the wilderness, those who had not borne the mark of the covenant, the circumcision, needed to be brought into the fold. Gathering the leaders and the people, Joshua explained the importance of this rite. It was not merely a physical act, but a profound spiritual commitment, a marking of oneself as part of the eternal covenant with the Almighty. The flint knives were sharpened, and the procedure was carried out, sealing the bond between God and his chosen people. The pain of the act was real, and the camp remained grounded as the men healed. Yet even in the midst of this pain, there was a tangible sense of joy, of belonging, of being chosen. It was a moment of collective introspection and commitment, of reaffirming their identity as the people of Yahweh. And as they healed, another significant event loomed on the horizon, the celebration of Passover. For the first time, this sacred festival would be observed in the Promised Land. Fields of barley swayed gently in the breeze, and the land was abundant with livestock. Using the produce of Canaan, they prepared for the Passover feast. Under the canopy of stars, as the first Passover moon in their new homeland illuminated the night, families gathered, recounting the tale of their ancestors' escape from Egypt. The bitter herbs, the unleavened bread, the lamb's roasted meat, each element of the meal was a reminder of their journey, of God's miraculous deliverance. At Gilgal, the past met the present, and the future seemed brighter than ever. The Israelites had not just crossed a river, they had traversed centuries of promise, and now they stood at the cusp of its fulfillment. With the covenant renewed and their spirits uplifted, they were truly ready to embrace the destiny that awaited them in the land flowing with milk and honey. Chapter 6. The Fall of Jericho. The sun had barely begun its ascent when the Israelite camp was abuzz with activity. Before them stood Jericho with its imposing walls and fortified gates, a testament to the might and prowess of its inhabitants. To many these walls seemed insurmountable, but Joshua, empowered by a divine vision, had a strategy most unconventional. Word spread like wildfire. There would be no siege, no archers releasing a volley of arrows, no battering rams. Instead, the plan sounded almost like a ritual. Armed men would lead the procession, followed by 7 priests carrying trumpets made of ram's horns. The Ark of the Covenant, the very symbol of God's presence, would come next, and the rear guard would follow. For 6 days they would march around the city once, the only sound being the haunting blow of the trumpets. There would be no battle cries, no clang of weapons, just the eerie resonance of the horns and the silent, steadfast march of a determined people. On the 7th day, the procedure would change. They would circle the city 7 times, and at the end, when the trumpets sounded a long blast, every man, woman, and child would shout in unison. To the inhabitants of Jericho, this must have seemed a bizarre spectacle. Mockery and jeers likely rained down from atop the walls in the initial days. But as the days passed, unease replaced their derision. There was something profoundly unsettling about the Israelites' silent march and those haunting trumpet sounds that seemed to pierce the very soul. On the seventh day, as the sun's rays bathed Jericho's walls in a golden hue, the Israelites began their march. Once, twice, thrice. With each circumvention, the tension grew palpable. By the time the seventh round was about to conclude, the very air seemed charged with anticipation. Then it came, the long, sustained trumpet blast. Time seemed to stand still. Every Israelite voice joined in a shout so powerful, so filled with faith and fervor, that it seemed as if the heavens themselves would split asunder. And then a miracle. The mighty walls of Jericho, which had stood for centuries, which had withstood countless sieges, began to tremble, to shake, and then to crumble. Brick by brick, stone by stone, they came tumbling down in a deafening roar. The city lay exposed, its defences shattered not by the might of an army, but by the faith of a people and the power of their God. The Israelites surged forward, and the city of Jericho, one of the greatest strongholds of Canaan, was conquered. The fall of Jericho was more than just a military victory. It was a testament to the power of faith, obedience, and divine providence. It sent ripples across Canaan, a clear message to all. The Israelites were here under the banner of the Almighty, and they were unstoppable. Chapter 7. The Sin of Akan. Amidst the jubilation and revelry following Jericho's fall, a shadowy undercurrent emerged, one that would soon send shockwaves throughout the Israelite camp. The taste of victory had barely settled when Joshua set his eyes on the next target, the small city of Ai. Based on its size and defences, a swift conquest seemed almost guaranteed. But what Joshua and the Israelites hadn't accounted for was a transgression hidden deep within their midst. The Almighty had clearly commanded that everything in Jericho was devoted to him. No spoils were to be taken. All silver, gold, bronze and iron were to be consecrated to the Lord's treasury. But Achan, a member of the tribe of Judah, succumbed to temptation. Driven by greed, he secretly took a beautiful Babylonian robe, a hefty amount of silver, and a wedge of gold. He buried them beneath his tent, thinking his misdeed concealed. Buoyed by their recent success and unaware of the transgression, the Israelites approached Ai with confidence. A small contingent was dispatched, but instead of a swift victory, they faced an unexpected and crushing defeat. Panic swept the camp. How could they, with the Lord on their side, suffer such a setback? Joshua, in deep distress, fell on his face before the Ark of the Covenant. "Alas, Sovereign Lord," he cried, "why did you bring us across the Jordan only to hand us over to the Amorites? If only we had been content to stay on the other side." God's answer was swift and clear. "Stand up. Why are you on your face? Israel has sinned." The Lord revealed the act of disobedience, the theft of the devoted items, which had rendered Israel vulnerable. A somber assembly was called, and through a process of divine guidance, Achan was identified. Confronted by Joshua, Achan confessed, "It is true, I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel." He detailed his crime, the allure of the treasures proving too much for him. The consequences of Achan's sin were dire, not just for him but for his entire family. In a valley that would come to be known as the Valley of Achan, meaning trouble, Achan and all he had were stoned to death and then burned. A large pile of stones was erected over them, a grim reminder of the cost of disobedience. The sin of Achan serves as a poignant lesson in the collective journey of the Israelites. In their divine mission, personal greed and disobedience could have catastrophic consequences. The purity of their collective purpose and unwavering obedience to God's commands were paramount. Only then could they truly claim the promised land as their own. Chapter 8. Redemption at Ai. In the wake of the tragic events at the Valley of Achor, a cloud of introspection hung over the Israelite camp. The sting of defeat, intensified by the realization of Achan's transgression, weighed heavily on their spirits. But amidst this melancholy, a new dawn awaited, promising redemption and a reaffirmation of the Israelites' destiny. Joshua, ever the resilient leader, took to heart the lessons of their recent setback. He recognized that both spiritual alignment and strategic wisdom were needed for success. And so, with God's assurance ringing in his ears, "Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, take the whole army with you, and go up and attack Ai. For I have delivered into your hands the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land." Joshua began planning the reconquest. The strategy was ingenious, a two-pronged assault. A large force would move to the west of Ai, drawing out its defenders, while a smaller contingent would hide to the east, ready to strike the city once it was emptied. As dawn's first light spread across the horizon, the plan was set into motion. As expected, the king of Ai took the bait. Seeing the Israelites amassing to the west, he mustered his warriors, confident of another victory. The city's gates swung open, and a tide of soldiers surged forth, chasing after what they believed to be the entire Israelite army. But this was precisely what Joshua had anticipated. With the city's defences drawn out, the hidden eastern contingent swiftly moved into Ai, setting it ablaze. Pillars of smoke rose to the sky, a beacon signalling to Joshua and his troops. At this sign, the Israelites turned, charging back with renewed vigour. The soldiers of Ai found themselves caught in a deadly pincer movement, Joshua and the main army in front, and the flames of their burning city behind. The battle was fierce but short-lived. The defences of Ai crumbled, its warriors falling one by one. The king of Ai was captured, and in a symbolic act of retribution he was hanged on a tree until evening. As the sun set, his body was taken down and buried at the city gates, covered with a large pile of stones. After the battle, Joshua built an altar to the Lord on Mount Ebal, using uncut stones. There the Israelites offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. In a solemn assembly, half of the people stood in front of Mount Gerizim and half in front of Mount Ebal, as Moses had instructed. Joshua read aloud the blessings and curses from the book of the law, ensuring every command was relayed to all the people. The redemption at Ai was more than just a military victory, it was a spiritual reaffirmation. It underscored the importance of obedience to God's will and showcased the blessings that followed. With Ai behind them, the Israelites set their sights on the many challenges that lay ahead, their faith stronger and their resolve unyielding. Chapter 9. The Jibionite Deception. The fame of Israel's recent triumphs travelled swiftly through the grapevine of Canaan, igniting a mix of awe and apprehension. While many Canaanite kings decided to unite against this emerging threat, the people of Gibeon took a different path. They knew they couldn't match the might of Israel's God, having heard tales of Jericho's fall and Ai's devastation. Instead, they hatched a plan, a ruse that would spare them from Israel's onslaught. The Gibeonites were meticulous in their deception. They chose a group of their men and dressed them in worn-out clothing. Their sandals were tattered, their wineskins old and mended, and their provisions dry and mouldy. They looked every bit like travellers from a distant land, weary from a long journey. As these disguised Gibeonites approached the Israelite camp, curiosity stirred among the Hebrews. Who were these ragged travellers? What did they want? "We have come from a distant country," the Gibeonites claimed, holding out their crumbled bread as proof. "We've heard of your God's mighty deeds, and we wish to make a treaty with you." Joshua, wary yet intrigued, addressed them. "But perhaps you live among us. How then can we make a treaty with you?" The Gibeonites, sticking to their tale, spoke of their long journey and their desire for peace. They praised the Lord, recounting tales of the exodus from Egypt and recent victories in Canaan. Moved by their words, the leaders of Israel, without inquiring of the Lord, accepted their story and made a peace treaty with them. They swore an oath, a sacred vow to let them live. But the truth soon unravelled. Merely 3 days after the treaty was sealed, the Israelites discovered that these distant travellers were in fact their neighbours, the Gibeonites. They hailed from nearby cities, ones that were on Israel's list of conquests. The Israelite assembly grumbled against its leaders, dismayed by their hasty decision. Bound by their oath, the leaders couldn't raise a hand against Gibeon. Instead, they summoned them and confronted them with their deceit. "Why did you deceive us?" Joshua demanded. The Gibeonites, vulnerable but candid, replied, "We feared for our lives, having heard of your God's might. We resorted to this ruse to save ourselves." Recognizing the weight of their sworn vow, Joshua decided on a different kind of judgment. The Gibeonites would live but as woodcutters and water carriers for the community and the altar of the Lord. This episode, though filled with deceit and intrigue, bore significant lessons. It highlighted the importance of seeking divine guidance in every decision and underscored the consequences of acting impulsively. Yet even in their error, the Israelites' commitment to their oath showcased their integrity and reverence for God's law. Chapter 10. The sun stands still. Canaan's land, steeped in history and conflict, now bore witness to a fresh tumult. Word spread quickly of the Gibeonite treaty with Israel, and it did not sit well with the Amorite kings. 5 of them, led by the king of Jerusalem, formed a coalition. Their first target, Gibeon, the city that had dared to ally with Israel. As Gibeon found itself besieged by this alliance, they sent an urgent plea to Joshua at Gilgal. "Do not abandon your servants, come quickly and save us. The Amorite kings have allied against us." Joshua, understanding the gravity of the situation and the stakes at play, decided to act. He saw beyond the immediate threat, recognizing this as an opportunity. If they could defeat this alliance, a clear message would be sent to all of Canaan. Israel was unstoppable, but Joshua needed divine assurance. As he prepared for the march, God spoke to him, "Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. None of them will stand against you." With renewed vigor, Joshua and his army marched all night, covering the distance to Gibeon with remarkable speed. Their surprise attack on the Amorite alliance was swift and brutal. The Lord, true to his word, threw the enemy into chaos. As the battle raged, God unleashed hailstones so ferocious that more Amorites were killed by heavenly projectiles than by the sword of Israel. Yet even amidst this divine intervention, Joshua realized he needed more time. The sun was inching closer to the horizon, and darkness would give the remaining Amorite forces an advantage. In a moment of unparalleled faith, Joshua, in the presence of all Israel, cried out to the Lord, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon over the valley of Ajalon." And then, a miracle. The sun halted its descent, and the moon held its position. Time seemed to pause. Never before or since has there been a day like it when the Lord listened to a man's plea. For an entire day the sun stood still, granting Joshua and his forces the time they needed to achieve a thorough victory. The 5 Amorite kings, in their bid to escape, hid in a cave at Makkedah. When Joshua learned of this, he ordered the cave sealed with large stones, ensuring they couldn't flee. Only after the battlefield was cleared did Joshua return to deal with them. He summoned his commanders, asking them to place their feet on the necks of these kings, a symbolic act demonstrating their conquest and God's promise of victory over their enemies. Shortly after the kings were executed, their reign of terror conclusively ended. The Israelites then embarked on a southern campaign, conquering city after city. From Makkedah to Libnah, from Lachish to Gezer, each fell to Israel's might combined with divine favor. The chapter of the long day when the sun stood still was not just about an extended daylight. It was a testament to unwavering faith, a divine partnership, and the power of prayer. It sent a clear message throughout Canaan. Israel was not just another invader, they had the Almighty on their side. Chapter 11. Conquests of the North. In the wake of the southern campaign, word of Israel's unstoppable march spread like wildfire across Canaan. To the north, tales of Jericho's fallen walls, the halted sun, and the miraculous interventions of the Almighty reached Jabin, king of Hazor. Concerned about the encroaching threat, he initiated a coalition. Kings from the northern regions, Madon, Shimron, Akshaph, and others, came together, their mutual fears unifying them against the formidable Israelites. The Northern Alliance, as they came to be called, amassed an army so vast it seemed innumerable. Their chariots alone, gleaming in the sun, spread across the plains like a metallic sea. They gathered at the waters of Merom, forming a daunting force that seemed impossible for the Israelites to conquer. Many believed that the power of the northern kings, combined with their strategic highland positions and formidable chariots, would finally halt Joshua's advance. But God, ever present in Joshua's journey, spoke reassuring words. "Do not be afraid of them. By this time tomorrow I will hand all of them over to Israel, slain. You are to hamstring their horses and burn their chariots." With divine assurance, Joshua launched a surprise attack, swiftly descending upon the Northern Alliance. The surprise was total. Before the northern kings could marshal their defences, they were thrown into disarray. The Lord's hand was evident as the Israelites gained an overwhelming advantage. True to God's command, Joshua hamstrung the horses and set the chariots aflame, ensuring that these war machines would no longer threaten the people of Israel. Hazor, as the lead city of the alliance, suffered most. Once a grand city of the north, it was captured and burned to the ground. Its influence as a royal city came to a fiery end. The subsequent months saw Joshua and the Israelites move from one northern city to another. Each fell like dominoes. From Hazor to Dor, the highlands of Israel echoed with the sounds of battle, triumph, and the fulfillment of God's promises. This northern campaign marked another series of decisive victories for the Israelites. While battles were fought with swords, spears, and strategy, it was the guiding hand of the Almighty that led the Israelites to each victory. The land, long promised to the descendants of Abraham, was gradually coming under their dominion. Yet even amidst conquest, the wisdom of governance and the challenges of occupying vast territories loomed on the horizon. The tale of the North was not just of military might, but of a divine promise slowly unfolding, a testament to what happens when faith, obedience, and divine purpose align. Chapter 12. Distribution of the land. The dust of battle had settled, and the once mighty Canaanite fortresses lay subdued. Israel's conquest had not been without its trials, but now a new challenge presented itself: distributing the vast and varied land of Canaan among the 12 tribes. With the tabernacle stationed at Shiloh, a central and sacred location, it became the meeting place for the leaders of Israel. Joshua, Eleazar the priest, and the heads of the tribes convened to discuss the future of the Promised Land. While Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh had already received their inheritance east of the Jordan, the remaining tribes awaited their portions. Using the Urim and Thummim, sacred lots used for divine decision-making, Eleazar sought the Lord's will for each tribe's inheritance. As the lots were cast, the boundaries of each territory were determined, and the tribes received their portions according to divine ordinance. Judah, a tribe of lion-hearted warriors, was granted the southernmost lands, encompassing the rugged terrain of the Negev desert, but also the fertile plains near Jerusalem. Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's sons, were given prime territory in the Central Highlands, a recognition of Joseph's pivotal role during Israel's time in Egypt. To the brave tribe of Benjamin, a strip of land between Judah and Ephraim was allotted, positioning them near the future site of Jerusalem. Simeon, though nestled within Judah's expansive territory, received cities of their own. Zebulun and Issachar found their place in the fertile Jezreel Valley, while Asher and Naphtali were graced with the rolling hills and coastlines of the north. Dan was initially given land near the Philistine coast, but later sought additional territory in the north. Each allotment was not just a division of physical land, it represented a part of Israel's covenant with God. It was an embodiment of the promise made to Abraham generations before. The tribes, though distinct in their territories, were united in their shared heritage and divine mission. However, the distribution was not without complications. Some tribes felt their allotment was too small or unsuitable. Others faced entrenched Canaanite cities within their borders, posing ongoing threats. Joshua, with wisdom and foresight, urged them to clear their lands of any remnants of Canaanite influence and to remain faithful to God's laws. Within the larger narrative of conquest and settlement, there was also the establishment of cities of refuge, safe havens for those who had committed unintentional manslaughter, ensuring justice and mercy within the new land. As the land distribution neared its end, Joshua set aside cities for the Levites, the priestly tribe. Given no extensive territory of their own, the Levites were to be scattered throughout Israel, serving as spiritual leaders and reminders of the nation's covenant with God. This chapter in Israel's story was not merely about maps and borders. It was a testament to God's faithfulness, a land flowing with milk and honey waiting to be cultivated and transformed. But as each tribe settled into its new home, the challenge remained. Would they uphold the covenant, or would the allure of the land and its former inhabitants lead them astray? Chapter 13. Cities of Refuge. Amid the sprawling landscapes and nascent settlements of Canaan, there emerged a unique provision within Israel's law, a system designed not for retribution, but for justice and mercy. As the tribes began to establish their roots in the Promised Land, the concept of the cities of refuge was introduced, representing God's deep understanding of human frailty and his unwavering commitment to righteousness. These cities were not grand metropolises with towering walls or majestic palaces. Instead, they were havens of hope, designated sanctuaries for those who had unintentionally taken a life. Within the bounds of these cities, a person could find protection from the avenger of blood, a family member of the deceased who might seek retribution. Joshua, in collaboration with the elders and under the guidance of the Levitical priesthood, identified 6 such cities spread evenly across the territories. Kadesh in Naphtali's northern terrain, Shechem in Ephraim's heartland, Hebron in the southern reaches of Judah, Bezer in Reuben's land beyond the Jordan to the east, Ramoth in Gilead within Gad's borders, and Golan in Bashan for the tribe of Manasseh. Upon reaching the safety of a city of refuge, the manslayer would present his case before the city elders at the gates. If his plea of accidental death was accepted, he was granted asylum, protected from any who sought vengeance. However, this sanctuary was not without conditions. The individual was required to remain within the city's boundaries until the death of the current high priest, a period that could span decades. Only then could the person return to their ancestral home without fear of retribution. The cities of refuge also underscored the sanctity of human life. They served as a constant reminder that every life is precious in God's sight, and even in cases of accidental death, there were consequences and processes in place to uphold justice while providing mercy. The Levites, given the responsibility of these cities, played a crucial role in maintaining their sanctity. As spiritual leaders, they were ideally positioned to guide both the refugee and the avenger, ensuring that the law was upheld and God's grace was evident. Yet, beyond the legalities and logistics, the cities of refuge were profound symbols of God's character. In a world where mistakes could lead to dire consequences, these cities stood as monuments to God's understanding of human imperfection and his unending compassion. They pointed forward to a time when all of humanity could find refuge in a Saviour, one who would take upon himself the weight of the world's transgressions and offer a sanctuary of eternal hope. Chapter 14. Caleb's Inheritance. Amidst the division of the Promised Land, as tribes laid claim to their newly allotted territories, one voice rang out with the vigour of youth, yet carried the weight of old age. This voice belonged to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, a warrior whose heart had remained undaunted through the years. The sun had completed its journey 45 times since that fateful day, when Caleb, alongside Joshua and 10 others, had been dispatched by Moses to scout the land of Canaan. Of the 12 spies, only he and Joshua had returned with a positive report, full of faith in God's promise, while the others sowed seeds of doubt and fear. Now, standing before Joshua and the assembly at Gilgal, Caleb's voice was firm. "You know the word which the Lord said to Moses concerning you and me at Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought him back a report according to my convictions." Caleb recounted the trials of the wilderness, the years of wandering, and how he had wholly followed the Lord God of Israel. Even as the weight of age bore down upon him, his spirit remained untamed, a burning testament to his faith in God's promises. He continued, "Now behold, the Lord has kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years since the word of the Lord came to Moses, while Israel wandered in the wilderness. Today I am 85 years old, yet I am as strong today as I was the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then." With conviction in his eyes, Caleb made his request. "Now therefore give me this hill country about which the Lord spoke on that day." He was referring to Hebron, a land inhabited by the Anakim, a formidable race of giants. It was the same land that had terrified 10 of the original spies, leading them to spread a report that dismayed the heart of Israel. Yet for Caleb, this was no mere land grab. Hebron held a deeper meaning, a fulfillment of a promise made by Moses due to his unwavering faith. It was a testament to a life spent wholly following the Lord, regardless of the challenges that lay ahead. Joshua, recognizing the righteousness and faith of his old comrade, blessed Caleb and granted him Hebron as his inheritance. The mountainous region, once a symbol of Israel's fears, would now become a beacon of faith, forever etched in history as the land conquered by an 85-year-old warrior whose heart never wavered in trust. In the years that followed, Caleb drove out the Anakim giants from Hebron, and the land had rest from war. It became a powerful testament to Israel and future generations, a reminder that with unwavering faith, age is but a number, and no giant is too great to conquer. Chapter 15. Farewell to the Eastern Tribes. As the sun bathed the landscape of Canaan in golden hues, a significant gathering took shape at the western banks of the Jordan River. The tribes of Israel had come together to bid farewell to their brothers, the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. These tribes had chosen their inheritance east of the Jordan, in lands that had been conquered before the crossing into Canaan. Years earlier, these tribes, possessing vast numbers of livestock, had seen the fertile plains of Gilead and Bashan and found them suitable for their herds. Approaching Moses, they had expressed their desire to settle there. But Moses, wary of their intention, challenged them, fearing they might abandon the rest of Israel to fight alone in Canaan. However, they had pledged to lead the charge into the Promised Land, vowing not to return to their families and lands until every tribe had received its inheritance. True to their word, they had fought valiantly alongside their brethren. Now, the battles were over, the land was subdued, and it was time for them to return to their families and flocks beyond the Jordan. Joshua, the leader who had steered them through countless challenges, now addressed them. "You have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you and have obeyed my voice in all that I have commanded you. You have not forsaken your brothers these many days up to this day, but have been careful to keep the charge of the Lord your God." The eastern tribes had proven their loyalty and commitment. With gratitude, Joshua blessed them. "Return to your tents with much riches, with very much livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, iron, and with very much clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers." But as they prepared to part, a pivotal reminder was given. Joshua, with wisdom gleaming in his eyes, cautioned them, "Only be very careful to observe the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God, and to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and to cling to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul." With heavy hearts, the western tribes watched as their brethren erected a large altar by the Jordan's banks, an emblem of unity and shared faith. However, this act would later lead to a misunderstanding, a testament to the challenges of maintaining unity in a sprawling, diverse nation. As the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh disappeared into the horizon, the Jordan's waters whispered tales of unity, bravery, and the importance of remembering one's promises. The eastern tribes had returned home, but their legacy of loyalty and valor was etched into the annals of Israel's history forever. Chapter 16. Joshua's Farewell Address. The rugged hills of Shechem bore witness to yet another historic gathering of the tribes of Israel. It was here that their patriarch Jacob had once pitched his tent, and here that Joseph's bones, brought from Egypt, had been laid to rest. Now, against this backdrop steeped in ancestral memories, an aging Joshua, the valiant warrior leader, stood ready to address his people one last time. The breeze carried with it a weight of solemnity as Joshua began, his voice echoing across the vast assembly. "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel," he began, recounting the history of their forefathers, from Abraham's journey to Terah's idolatry. The narrative unfolded, retracing the miraculous works of God, from the plagues in Egypt to the parting of the Red Sea, and from battles against Canaanite kings to the inheritance of the Promised Land. As the historical tapestry was woven, it was not just a recounting of events, but a profound reminder of God's unwavering faithfulness. "You have seen all that the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake, for it is the Lord your God who has fought for you," Joshua proclaimed. But his voice held a note of caution. The lands they inhabited were once tread upon by people who worshipped other gods. The allure of these deities, with their rituals and feasts, could easily entice the Israelites. "Be very careful, therefore, to love the Lord your God," Joshua warned. Then came the crux of his message, a call that would echo through the ages. "Choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your fathers served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." The people responded with a unanimous voice, their declaration resounding with conviction. Far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. They remembered the miracles, the guidance, the providence. The Lord had been their protector, their guide, their provider. Joshua, however, understood the fickle nature of human hearts. He challenged their proclamation, "You are not able to serve the Lord, for he is a holy God." But the people insisted, reaffirming their commitment, prompting Joshua to establish a stone as a witness to their declaration. This stone, set beneath the sacred oak, stood as a testament to the covenant renewed that day. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows over Shechem, as Joshua, with tears in his eyes, blessed his people. His journey was nearing its end, but the legacy he left behind, a legacy of leadership, faith, and unwavering commitment to God, would live on in the annals of time. And as the tribes dispersed, heading to their respective territories, the words of their venerable leader lingered in their hearts and minds, a clarion call for generations to come. Choose this day whom you will serve. Chapter 17. The Final Rest. The golden hues of dawn spread over the horizon, bringing another day to the Promised Land. But in the tents of the Israelites a somber mood prevailed, for news had spread that their great leader Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, had breathed his last. The man who had led them into the Promised Land, who had been a beacon of hope, faith, and strength, had been called to his final rest. In the hill country of Ephraim, in the town of Timnath-Serah, preparations were underway for Joshua's burial. Elders, judges, and leaders from each tribe came forth to pay their respects, each bearing tales of valor and wisdom, echoing the legacy of a man chosen by God to fulfill a divine mission. Children, who had only known the land of Canaan as their home, listened intently as their parents recounted tales of Joshua's younger days, his unwavering faith as one of the 12 spies, his leadership during the crossing of the Jordan, and his strategic prowess in the conquests that followed. His life was a testament to obedience, trust, and an unwavering commitment to the God of Israel. As the mourners gathered, the Levitical priests, draped in their ceremonial robes, began the rites, their voices rising in somber chants that invoked memories of battles won, miracles witnessed, and the steadfastness of the covenant. The air was thick with emotion, with tears and tribute flowing freely. In accordance with his wishes, Joshua was laid to rest in the land of his inheritance, in Timnath-Serah, which he had chosen for himself. There, on a serene hillside, a large stone monument was erected, standing as a sentinel over the grave of one of Israel's greatest heroes. Yet even in their grief, the Israelites found solace. For Joshua's life was a testament to God's promises, promises that had been fulfilled in their lifetime. The land beneath their feet, the peace in their homes, the stories of valor and faith that would be passed down for generations, all bore witness to the covenant between God and his people. In the days that followed, as the routines of life resumed and the people went about their daily tasks, there was a palpable sense of gratitude and reflection. Every corner of the land, every city, every hill and valley echoed with the stories of Joshua. His legacy was not just in the conquests or the distribution of the land, but in the hearts of the people. He had shown them the way to serve and trust in the Lord wholeheartedly. And so, in the very land flowing with milk and honey where Abraham had once walked, where Isaac and Jacob had sojourned, Joshua, the son of Nun, found his final rest. His journey had come full circle, from the banks of the Nile in Egypt to the heart of the Promised Land. The shepherd boy turned warrior, leader and prophet was now eternally cradled in the bosom of the land he loved, leaving behind a legacy that would inspire countless generations to come.